One big thing is a bit of a hodgepodge. It was a wormhole that I didn't quite get all the way into. And by the way, we have a double blind one big thing where I don't really know what yours is and you don't really know what mine is. That's actually not par for the course.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that in the future, but
Well,
it's just the way
some,
it is
sometimes it
today.
gets crazy. So it's just a little overview, really. And Saudi Arabia is positioning itself to be a data sort of. It's digitalizing at a tremendous rate. It got a huge bounce in that regard with the pandemic. But it's already a major feature of the Vision 2030 goals, and it's trying to become a data center for the region. Um, and all this was, I just looked at it and said, okay, so you can do that, and there's a reason to do that, but there's a significant infrastructure that underpins this goal, and there are two of them. One are data centers, actual data centers, and two are fiber optic cables, which run all over the world and are expensive to put in. And most of them run undersea fiber optic cables. And so I just looked to see where Saudi Arabia was with this, and so let's look at the data centers. Um, in uh, in in 2020, the Saudi Ministry of Communications, Information Technology (MCIT) launched an $18 billion plan to build a network of large-scale data centers across the kingdom. This is really led in most part by STC, Saudi Telecom. Although there are a lot of private companies sort of jumping in, including American companies. And the goal for the SEC goal is to eventually end up with a 16 facility data center strategy, basically bringing on 125 megawatts of capacity. The interesting thing is there was Al Raji Capital did a report, and they were looking at the what was needed, and what they were saying was current capacity is 60 megawatts, which is not a lot. What's needed over the next 5 years is 360 megawatts, and the goal is by 2030 to get beyond that. The goal is to get to 1,300 megawatts, so 1.3 gigawatts of data capacity. So it's needed. It's not sufficient, but it's planned and coming online. And so that's one side of it. So, and you have others. Microsoft is building a data center. Um, a lot of Huawei is building a significant number of data centers and working with local entities. So, there's this one part. The other part is fiber optic cables, global fiber optic cables, which run all over the world. There's a significant bottleneck coming through from Europe and points north through the Reds, essentially, following waterways. So there's a significant bottleneck coming through the Suez Canal. Egypt, something like 15 to 30% of all data coming to the region and globally comes through Egyptian bottlenecks. Egypt sort of has it's known that it's a operational bottleneck, but also Egypt charges more, so it's a bit of a problem. Right now in train, and this is what I wanted to get to, just so our listeners and our viewers to hear about this. These are things in process. Three interesting projects in terms of undersea undersea and on land fiber optic cables are underway now. One is spearheaded by Google, and this is called the Blue Ramen fiber optic cable, and it's going to be 500 miles long, costs $400 million, begins in Italy, passes over Israel before reaching Saudi Arabia, Oman, and finally on to India. Big deal. 16 fiber optic cables. Obviously, Google, is putting this in. They expect it to be completed in 3 years. The other one, major project. We talked about it when we talked about Mohammed bin Salman's visits to Greece. It's the East Med Data Corridor, EMC. Greece and Saudi Arabia are spearheading this, and it's an undersea and land cable. And STC is a big holder. Public power company in Greece is a big holder, and Cyprus telecoms operators are big holders. It's going to be expected to be completed by the end of 2025. Will be a significant corridor for data between Europe and India, running again through Saudi Arabia. This is a big part of this thing. And then there's a third one that is more in the feasibility stage, but is quite interesting. It's called the Trans-Europe Asia System, TEAS. And it's a 20,000 kilometer cable that runs through 4 GC states, excuse me, as well as Israel. And it would bypass the Suez Canal altogether. So it'd come across the north on land, come across the north of Saudi Arabia and come out the Gulf side. And it has really a very big proposition that apparently is gaining significant political traction in Saudi Arabia. There's no expected arrival date for that, but it would essentially hook up the GCC states, Saudi Arabia, in between Jordan, Palestine, Israel, and all the way down to India. So it would be a significant addition to the cable capacity. So anyway, that's it. I wanted to look at this. Saudi Arabia, has these goals, but we often look at things and say, well, what are the impediments to implementing these goals? And to be a data center, a nexus and for data for the region, you have to actually have data centers and you actually have to have undersea cable, both of which Saudi Arabia is taking steps to try and implement and expand their capacity significantly.
Yeah, Richard, this is really good. I wonder why Google named it the ramen, the blue ramen. I mean, maybe it's a big ramen noodle going on the bottom of the ocean.
It's named after Indian physicist Chandrasekhara Venkata Raman.
Who founded the noodle dinner, right?
I assume that Indian physics was your second guess.
It was actually. No, Richard, this is very good. I'm seeing a piece too in Middle East Eye that also kind of lays this out just as you did. That's really good. I didn't know any of this. Go ahead.
By the way, sorry, appropriate to that, and I've got to find it now. I've got to pull it up. The Middle East Eye. I want to get him on the show.
This guy, the journalist, Paul Cochran?
David Cochran?
I've got Paul Cochran here.
Yeah, he wrote 2 interesting ones because he also talked about, so he's written a number of things for Middle East Eye and seems to know his business. I thought might be interesting to get him on the show.
This is the official invitation for Paul Cochran to come join us because I'm looking at his most recent piece that came out yesterday. It's got a map of all of this and it kind of just shows you. Exactly. It's like it's all it's all going around Saudi Arabia and not through it, but you can see where it's going. So that's why it's significant if they can get this. Is it Duda? Is the
Duba, yeah,
in Saudi Arabia. Yeah,
exactly. So, up near Neom.
Yeah, right near Neom. So you can see how the TEAS, the Trans-European Asia System, would cut right through. I mean, it's almost like the Panama Canal for data cables. If they could just figure out how to get it there and have it go over to the Arabian Gulf, as it is officially known on the 966, you could save a lot of effort going all around Djibouti. And yeah, I mean, this is really cool, this map. And this article is, David, Paul Cochran, please join us on the 966. This is really cool.
Well, he did another one sorry to interrupt. He did another one for Middle East Eye, Saudi Arabia's digital dream, Silicon Valley for the Middle East. So he's deep into this. This was sort of where the launching point was Paul Cochran's excellent work. And sort of saying, and that's how I got there. Sort of, if you want this, the Silicon Valley for the Middle East, you've got to have apart from the talent, but first you have to actually have the infrastructure, and that leads you to data centers and fiber optic cables. And that overland one is quite an interesting proposition because overland is a little more expensive. It's a little more dicey. It can be done because there's not much to go around. Population centers up in that part of the kingdom. But Paul Cochran, please come on. I think you have some interesting things that we'd love to hear.
So do you have a sense of why overland is more expensive? It seems like it might be easier to just drop the cable on the land versus running it on the ocean, but maybe it's more expensive because you have to protect it or route it around cities and towns.
You worked it out. It's just more vulnerable,
Okay.
and you have to be able to. You're going to have to. The maintenance security issues are greater in tending it. Once you drop it at the bottom of the sea, unless it's a Nord Stream 2, it's
Yeah.
usually not bothered with.
Yeah. I really like these topics, Richard, where I just learn in the minute, in the moment, speaking with you about it. And then now my like brain has been jolted to life thinking about the really stupid, dumb questions that I could ask this gentleman, like how big the cable is and what it looks like, and would it be
Well,
easy to
and
cut, you know?
there's actually in that next pull up the digital dream, it actually has a sort of a cross section of a cable. They're not big. They're like lots and lots of glass optics. I don't know the exact how it's constructed exactly, but maybe it's just they're not big. It's not like a huge pipeline going through. They just have to be wrapped and protected and laid. And there's when you look at those graphs and that you're showing the maps, they're just tens and tens of them sort of running through the waterways.
Yeah. So Egypt has sort of had the monopoly on this for a while, and there's an opportunity to basically go around Egypt or somehow end the bottleneck. Fascinating.
Well, one of the things he does say, which is interesting, he talks about um, Egypt's sort of monopoly, just as you said, and their mismanagement of it.
Yep.
Instead of sort of doing more, making it easier, they sort of said, "Okay, we've got this. We'll just overcharge you, and we'll slow it up a little bit, and so on." And which is, of course, spurring competition all around the region. And his point is, this is good because the competition will help everybody if data transport and access is less expensive. Everybody benefits.
The line in this piece, Richard, quote, but just as a grounded ship in a canal will cause delays, as happened with the Ever Given in March 2021, so Egypt is considered a choke point by the fiber optic cable industry due to the lack of alternative routes across a geostrategically critical part of the world. That's funny.
It is good, and it's apropos. That is really good, and that's short term thinking, and so as a result, they're going to end up losing their chokehold on it.
Yeah. Richard, we're going to have on the 966 cable week or maybe fiber optic cable week
Yeah,
or something like that so that we can really get into this. We can have Paul Cochran join us, get really into the cable, really
it
understand this issue because this
it
is
is
cool.
one of those things that it's the part of the iceberg that's under the water in
Hmm.
terms of data and digitization.
Yeah. Very, very cool. This, and as you noted, and this is important because it sort of underpins the VC startup ecosystem in Saudi Arabia, starting a business, expanding your business there. You need this stuff. You need to be able to rely on it and not have to think about it.
Yeah.
And so if they can get there, very cool.